Hello, welcome to today's webinar. My name is Ariel Kranzow. I do content marketing at Northpass, and I've been your virtual event host for the last little while. So if you've been on one of our webinars before, it's great to see you again. If not, it's really nice to meet you. We are here with two thought leaders in the customer experience space. And to do a quick introduction, we've got Steve Cornwell, who's the CEO and founder of Northpass. He's really helped company grow to build businesses, to help businesses build their customer experience through training. He's helped brands like Compass, Shopify, Talkspace transform learning and analytics programs into world-class centers of excellence. And then we also have Daniel Rodriguez here. He's currently the CMO at Simplr, where he's leading a team that is redefining the way brands deliver customer service. He's also the co-author of Experience is Everything, a book that focuses on the now CX movement. Got customer experience on the line, nice. And so before we jump into the conversation, just so all of you that are here know what to expect for today, we're going to have a conversation obviously around customer experience and how you can create strong customer experience strategies. And Steve and Daniel are going to help us understand the current CX standards, where companies are taking customer experience now and in the future. Sound good to you two?
Sounds great.
Let's roll.
Awesome. So bit of housekeeping. It's going to be interactive. We've got a couple of polls, one which I'll just pop up in a second there. And as we've been talking about in our promotion, someone on this live webinar is going to receive a Yeti cooler. So at the end of the webinar, I will be going and randomly choosing somebody from our attendee list, and we'll notify you via email. So keep an eye out for that. And again, put your questions in the Q&A box. We will answer questions at the end of the session, but please, as questions pop up in your head, put them in and I will get to the ones that I can. And if we have more questions than we can get to, we will email you a response. Sound good?
Sounds good.
We're all ready? Cool. So let's just see where everybody is at. I just want to know from the people on, how experienced are you with customer experience? Are you just really getting started and here to just start learning, working on building up a strategy, doing it for a while? Any others? All right. So far, we don't have anyone who's a total novice. That's good. I feel like it's good to talk to people who are a little bit on the more experienced mark. We can elevate the conversation. So a lot of people, I'd say 70% of people on who've answered are working on their strategy at the moment. So just for us to keep in mind as we're talking, really gearing towards that. So we'll definitely do that. Thanks. So cool. All right, ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
Okay. So Daniel and Steve, you're both customer experience advocates, and obviously you've both been in the game for a while. I'd love if we could just take a step back and would love to understand how customer experience became something that you wanted to focus your attention on. Daniel, you want to share?
I mean, a lot of research shows that the reason that we actually make purchases is not based on a rational decision, as strange as that sounds, right? It's emotional. And I think that so many great customer experiences tap into that innate emotion. And I think that that's what then builds repeat customers and builds loyalty. people wanting to feel valued, people wanting to feel special. And it's incredible how both easy it is to do that well, how inexpensive it can be to do that well, and how many companies fail to do this well. So, so here, partly because I feel like there's work to be done.
Yeah, I think for me, I on a more like on a, like a personal side, I just love having a great customer experience. Sometimes I'll write about that, especially on like main street shops or like boutique type of online shopping experiences. It's just like what feels better than having like a really great customer experience, right? Beyond just the products you buy, like that whole end-to-end experience. So personally, I think it's awesome when as a consumer you feel that. And I think professionally, when I think about customer experience and just kind of look at the world today, I really think customer experience is like that final competitive moat that companies have available to use to really differentiate. Because I'm sure all of you on the line and can probably acknowledge that, like, no matter what industry we're in, I saw manufacturing, financial services, last mile delivery, just a couple of the industries that people popped into the channel. All of it is becoming so competitive, right? Products get commoditized, services get commoditized, distribution channels get super crowded, content channels get crazy noisy, ad channels get expensive. So with all that competition just increasing and increasing, price pressure is becoming more intense. How do you really stand out? How do you differentiate? And for me, I think customer experience is really that final moat that companies can build differentiated advantages on. And what's so cool about customer experience, what's so powerful is like, and Daniel, I'm like really interested to get your perspective on this, but it's hard to copy that, right? Like, because it's kind of core to the human element of a brand, right? You can't really copy someone's customer experience because it is intrinsically the company. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I can reflect on that a little bit. I think what's interesting is that you might not be able to strictly copy it in the sense that you've now created some type of connection and a relationship with somebody. So there's bond there that has occurred. But I do think that there are things that we can learn from companies that are doing this well, that are repeatable, that you can operationalize. And that's, I think, some of the stuff that I hope to impart on others today too.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
No, thank you for sharing. It's really good to know when you speak to people who are involved in something so deeply. It's good to know where they came from and why they care about something. So thank you too for sharing that. Oftentimes, what I feel is customer experience and customer support from the internal perspective get kind of muddled together, and they're very different things. One is, a service, and one is sort of a culmination of all the services. I'd love to hear your understanding about how they're different, how they both have their place. Daniel, you want to take a crack at that?
Yeah, I mean, customer service is usually a function within the organization. There are people that then have a title that says, I am on the customer service team, and my job is to then take customer service requests that come in. Most of the times they're in more challenging situations, but some of the times they're not, and deal with them and try to have metrics like net positive retention, right? That you're trying to improve, and customer satisfaction. What's interesting, I think, is that most companies do not understand that customer experience is not that. To your point, Ariel, right? What's baffling in some ways, right, is that organizations don't use the language of customer experience to empower almost every department within the organization, because it's not that far of a stretch for almost everybody at a company, whether you are in product, whether you are in engineering, whether you are in sales, or whether you're in marketing, to be able to draw a straight line between the work that you're doing and the way that a customer is then interacting with your brand or a future customer. In the case of marketing, we're doing a lot of work with people that aren't yet our customers. Sales is doing a lot of work with people that aren't yet customers. Those touch points that people are having, though, are integral to the way that people think about a brand. And I'll give a good marketing example. When we talk about, how do you burrow into somebody's into somebody's emotional state, right? This idea of surprise and delight, things that people can do and feel empowered to do. I received, this was a long time ago. This actually happened over 10 years ago. This still kind of sticks with me. I bought a pizza. This was like a Friday night, got a pizza from the local pizza shop. I received the pizza from the pizza delivery person, and they were like, here you go. And I was like, try to give them money. They're like, no, it's no charge. I was like, what are you talking about? I open up the pizza box, and there is a note from Zappos that they had purchased my pizza and to just spread the love, kind of thing. And I was like, why is this happening? This isn't even, I don't even know how's like, and I do not believe that Zappos was just targeting me because they knew I was already a Zappos customer, that was a prospective customer. I was probably living in a geography that they wanted to, that they found was good for them to mine. But it is incredible word of mouth marketing, right? I've gone around and talked to a bunch of people about that. That experience gave me goosebumps. I was baffled by it. And of course, it made me want to go back and shop at Zappos again and again. So that's, in some ways, a relatively extreme example, because people would say, wow, that was probably expensive. But the point of that story is that marketing knew that their job was to help create a customer experience that would then build loyal customers. It wasn't just sell more shoes through this targeted ad campaign that allows us to have attribution. The attribution on that campaign was probably bad, actually. It's probably very difficult to attribute that campaign. But somebody up top and other people within the organization said, this is part of what our job is as a company.
Yeah, that's an incredible story. And that really makes me feel, and you can feel when companies actually care about their customer and care about the experience beyond just the dollars in. Steve, I think we have this conversation all the time about how we can create a better customer experience, and it's oftentimes not talked about in dollars.
Yeah, sure. I just want to build, before I get to that area, I just want to build on Daniel's story there. I had a chance, Zappos was like the best, right? At this, so good. I had a chance to tour their HQ years ago in a prior business where we were serving the retail industry. And they had like the most unbelievable like metrics in their call center kind of floor, if you will, or like their service center floor. They had a metric, and it was people would get awarded for the longest calls, for how long you could keep a customer on like the support line. And sometimes it'd be like hours and they would get awarded for that, as opposed to a more traditional metric where it's like get people in and out and answer their question and, and end it. And wow, look at how low our support case, how fast we can drive down our support cases. It was just so cool. So that story is like just not surprising how awesome that is. But yeah, Ariel, I think your question about, how you can kind of like some of the strategies that, you can put in place there. I mean, for us, on our side, here at Northpass, we think about one of the best ways to drive, those world-class service experiences is one, just through education, right? Through educating the end consumers on the brand, on the products and the services, and making sure that there's available education, pre and post sale on what those products are, how to use them, why they're great, how to get the most value out of them, etc. And then also kind of on the internal side, those, educating those people that are serving the end consumers, right? The people on those calls, the people selling, the people servicing. So, for us, we think education's like a huge component. Education and training is a huge component in that, providing that like world-class experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're obviously all believers that a customer experience is, 1,000% necessary. And I feel like more and more brands are starting to pick up on this, and we're building really a customer focused era. I don't think I've coined that in any way, but I feel like that's what we're in now. And I read articles about it, I see it on podcasts, and everyone's talking about how you can improve customer experience. What are some ways that you can, share that you think help brands and companies be successful at that? It's not everybody has the budget to just put, a thank you note in a pizza box. But what are some of the really core ways that companies can help their customers?
I can start off with this. This is, we talk to brands. So we work with a lot of consumer facing, companies, and help them with their digital interactions that they're having with their customers. So we've got a lot of like first party data, third party data about this. We've got a lot of information that we put into the book. By the way, I will offer up too to anybody on this call that's interested. I'll give you a free copy of the book, because we're only going to touch on a couple of these topics, but really passionate about just sharing this learning that we've done over the past few years. Part of it, I think, is understanding where you are letting customers down in their expectation of how you should be. And one of the fascinating things I think that we've recognized over the past few years as we've been capturing this data about customer preferences is that basically we as consumers, and this is, I think, things that if we held up a mirror, we would probably recognize are true of us, is that we have become collectively as consumers, this is American consumers, by the way, more impatient and basically a little bit more like Veruca Salt from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. We are wanting things our way. And when I mean our way, we want to interact with the brand through the medium of our choice, not how the brand is telling us. And we want expediency. We want things now, just like Veruca Salt does. And this has, the theory that we have, about the cause and effect here, I think is because, and there's data that people, it's kind of like a sociological data that people have captured about this. Your competitor is not the person right next to you at the trade show booth selling the same type of thing that you do. Your competitor is the brand that is creating great experiences in purchasing and through that lifetime journey. And people are then comparing you to that and expecting that of you in the way that they are being treated as a consumer. Companies like Amazon, companies like Netflix have really solved for what is consumer ease of transaction. I want to be able to buy easily. I want to be able to interact with you easily. And so that's your competitor. And that has raised the bar. That you might feel like that's unfair to you now that you're back in your seat as a person working at a company, trying to satisfy these impetulant consumers. But that is, I think, the reality of where things are right now, which means that we have work to do. We need to first, I think, start with understanding if we are keeping people waiting and we're not allowing them to even interact with us where they want to, that is going to be a problem. And what do I mean by a problem, right? So sometimes people measure things in customer satisfaction score. And I would argue that customer satisfaction is like a black and white movie. Yes, it's giving you some idea of what's going on, but it is not kind of vivid enough to really understand the true nature of it. The strength, I think, that organizations have in turning customers into advocates who are also Veruca Salt at the same time is understanding that they need to turn all their channels on all the time, and they need to be able to then get back to people and interact with them kind of quickly, right? So, hey, if you have chat on your site, for instance, so that you might realize, wow, we don't have chat on our site right now, or we have chat on our site for only 10 hours a day. And then when we aren't able to get back to people in 2 or 3 or 4 minutes on our chat around the edges, maybe that's okay, but it's not okay. That's what ends up happening, because those folks go and either leave, they go to another brand, or, and we've seen this time and again, this just happened with a company they were recently talking to. They go onto social media and they torch you, basically. And it becomes a CEO and a board of directors type of issue. And all of a sudden, customer experience matters a lot to companies, but in a way that feels like a fire drill and a freak out. And so what can be done to set this up and communicate within the organization to avoid that happening? That I think is the work.
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah. I mean, I think as you know, as a consumer, I always am looking for where can I, if you have a problem, having that problem being solved quickly and exactly where you are is, you know, is such a big contributing factor to whether or not you'll buy again. I mean, I've had many experiences where like you just walk away, you're like, I'm so frustrated with you that like, I don't care how much I love your products, I'm done.
So the data to support that sentiment that you're having is that about half of consumers, if they have an experience that fits into this feeling of, we termed it neglect, but you were talking about it as a frustration you're having, about half leave.
Yeah.
About half leave. Right.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I'd love to, Steve, like we, I think often talk about trying to meet the customer where they are. And, you know, we talk about like why that matters, but I'd love for you to share like what brands and companies can do to actually meet customers at the right place at the right time.
Yeah, sure. I think just as like Daniel was saying, like with communicating with customers, like turn the channels on, right? Like communicate with customers on their terms, on their form, you know, their devices, their communication channels necessary, or that they really prefer. At Northpass, we really think of that when we think about it like in a learning context, we think about it really similar to that, where kind of gone are the days of a static learning experience or a standalone disconnected learning experience. And we think of it much more of an embedded, integrated, just-in-time experience. So from if we're thinking about training or educating a customer, instead of just having a standalone resource center where they have to really search through it and find, you know, the information, how about bringing that information directly to the customer based on behavioral signals in your product, in your service, that show and indicate that they need help with something, that they need to be educated on something. It could be very simple or it could be more complex depending on what the product set is. And so, you know, we really try to our methodology, like our view on learning, is to really make it more proactive, more embedded, more seamlessly integrated within the websites, the mobile apps, so that customers can really get that information when they need, where they need it, and really don't even have to think about it, right? It's just like, oh, wow, that's the perfect piece of learning content I happen to need right now. So, and there's so many amazing systems out there generating data that can really inform how to trigger that learning experience out there. So we work a lot within the kind of consumer services, on-demand apps economy. That's a big part of where we work. And so many of our customers in that segment, for example, when they're looking to educate their couriers, their drivers, their in-home service providers, when they're in those apps, they'll automatically be served the appropriate learning content, so that when they're serving the consumer, when that courier, when that driver, when that in-home service provider is presenting to the consumer or we're delivering to the consumer, they're able to learn about how to do that right in context of the situation that they're in. So for us, we really think about, just like Daniel was talking about, like with communications, it's really important to be available everywhere, have the right context. We think about that the same way with education and learning.
Yeah.
I love that, Steve. I mean, the idea of just-in-time training for customer-facing people at your company to make sure that they're putting their best foot forward and the organization is collectively putting its best foot forward is a great example of the breadth that customer experience itself has.
Yeah, it's so important, right? So important.
Yeah. So to everybody on here, I'm going to just throw up one more poll just because I want to see what is everybody on the call, what are you doing to improve your CX? I put a few, multiple choice questions in here, but if you want to add in the chat, like what are you actually doing to improve your customer experience from internally? We'd love to hear what you're doing, and because maybe you'll be giving, even if you put something in the chat, like you're going to give somebody else an experience how their business can better serve their own customers.
Ariel, can people see the results that are happening?
Yes, not at the moment.
At the moment,
but
okay.
I can.
I'm just curious, because I want to know what the answer is.
Yeah. Okay. So people are still answering. So once they do, I'll share the results with everybody. I think I forgot to do that with the last poll, adding a chat box in there. That's the other. Someone put other, and then all right. So everyone's answered. So I'm gonna end the poll, and I will share the results. Can everyone see them?
Yes.
So yeah, it's like 60% creating an online academy or course, improving your customer success team, 70% incorporating AI into the experience. And I'm sure there's a lot of other ways that we can do it. These were the few off, like around the conversation off the top of my head. But if anyone has other ideas of strategies that you want to share in the chat, or if you too want to add any other strategies you think of, that'd be great.
I mean, we end up talking, every day with people about how do they utilize. This is something that someone mentioned about AI, which is, broad, I think, of a term. So, but I see that Chris in the chat talked about a chatbot. We end up talking to people about chatbots every single day because there is so much interest in the cost savings that people can achieve from having a chatbot, and because there is at least a perceived expediency, meaning like, well, the chatbot is going to be there all the time on the site and it will be able to at least get back to people quickly. Now, of course, if you flip yourself over again into the consumer side and reflect on maybe one of the last few times that you interacted with the chatbot, like, did you end up getting stuck in the chatbot equivalent of that phone tree hell that you can't get out of, right? Where you're like Tom Cruise in Vanilla Sky, like tech support, like get me out of here. And so there are, I think, ways to, and we can, I'm more than happy to have a conversation with anybody afterwards. You can just ping me and let me know. There are ways, I think, to build a chatbot experience that creates a seamless customer experience. But it requires that you understand that your chatbot has to be connected to people. And if that is not happening through the systems that you then have, what ends up resulting is a disconnected, frustrating, poor customer experience. Yes, that's my little chatbot soapbox.
Yeah, it's we're definitely getting a bunch of chatter in the chat, and just talking about like making sure that you're getting to people on time is one of the most important things. And we know that we need to solve customer issues exactly when and where through these always on experiences. How do you think these methods make an impact over traditional support channels, such as like just an FAQ or a knowledge base? Steve, you want to start there?
Yeah, Daniel, hop in, please.
Yeah. So, I'm like yes and with a lot of these things, right? So, having a knowledge base, and a knowledge base starts with the idea that you actually know what the right answers are to a good number of your customers' questions, right? So being able to successfully create a knowledge base is a very important step, or else you're just kind of constantly realizing that you're making it up at the beginning every day, right? And you're not kind of learning from yesterday. Knowing how to then utilize that knowledge base in automated ways, I think, is a challenge for a lot of organizations. How do I take what I know and allow it to become something that is either self-service, which is a form of automation, right? Or automated in an interactive way, right? Allow people to go get it on their own, but we don't have to touch that. Or I can build that into a bot functionality where there is an answer and response that is kind of coming back self-contained within it. And so we work with a lot of companies to try to help them figure out what is the right way to take a knowledge base, and maybe you haven't fully built it all the way out yet, but to take a knowledge base and then kind of make it as efficient as it is for the customers. This also does not mean, by the way, that you should try to automate away everything that you just have an FAQ for. People still probably need, and we see this all the time, people get an FAQ that might be what they're looking for, but then they have a follow-on question. And if you can't facilitate answering the follow-on question, you don't get credit for having resolved that customer's issue, right? Because their issue was not just the first thing, it was the two things. So thinking about resolutions, not just first response times, can become a really important metric. And I'll throw out another metric, if I can, to get people, as they were talking about kind of the strategy of how do I get all the way there into this kind of holistic customer experience. And we talk about this in, I believe, chapter 12 of our book too, where we built this maturity model. Actually, it goes this way. I should do it for you in this direction because it's a right to left. And what we see is that the customer effort score is probably the singular best metric. It's easy to capture, it's easy to understand, and it is that movie in living color, because there are fewer places to hide in the way that metrics can then get either manipulated or just that you don't kind of see the full picture in what's happening. Customer effort score is absolutely what organizations, by the way, that are solving for these great customer experiences that we're trying to compete against, that is a metric that they obsess over. And you want to lower one because you want effort to be low. So low customer effort scores become the new measure of success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. And I think so similar to how we've been talking about how making sure the communication channels are open and available and always on, and within the channels of the consumer's preference. I think like the information channels need to be the same way. Like you were talking about, where it's not an either or, it's an and, right? So like there are people that want to read an FAQ. There are people that don't want to read it and they just want to like write in and get an immediate answer, more of an on-demand type of communication style. Other people want to sit down and actually go through a more formal piece of literature or FAQ or course or whatever it may be. So I think so similar to the communication channels, like we just need to be making information available to people in the way that they want it, whether that's actual communication interactions or self-service type of interactions. And I think that's so key for the future, because with all these devices and screens and different apps, that you don't really know all the different styles. So we got to turn them all on.
Yeah, totally. And I wanted to comment here on Forrest Bailey's note. Actually, I'm noticing that some people are saying things that are just to us, and some people are saying things that are to everybody. So this note actually just came to us when Forrest was talking about in the world of on-demand delivery, response times, customers, as well as the drivers is really big deal. So they're trying to constantly drive down response times, launched a chatbot that eventually routes to a live person. That is great, Forrest. I commend you on kind of making that progress. We can talk more about this because, again, as you can tell, I'm passionate about this. I love to kind of dive deep. One thing to consider, if it's something that you haven't already considered, is the idea of value-based routing. So this is going a little bit deep, but for those who are willing to stick with us on this, because now we're talking about, we've got a chatbot on our site. We're trying to make sure that we're creating this great customer experience. And one of the things that can happen is that we use the chatbot with a predominantly deflective strategy. Hey, we're going to take the easiest inquiries and we're going to then try to automate those away. And then the things that are harder, we are going to then pass over to people. And there is money left on the table with that approach. You can do it differently, where you would route to a human based on the value of the interaction, not the complexity of the interaction. So for instance, it might be a relatively simple thing to do to answer the question around a product sizing when somebody is in a pre-sale chat on a website of a company that sells clothing. Hey, do you have this available in an extra small, right? And you might be able to automate that interaction, but that is a high value interaction because it is a purchase intent interaction. And what you would prefer, and what data shows, is that you are going to capture more net new revenue when you take high value interactions and route them directly to a person, because chatbots are not perfect at this stuff and people are better at that stuff. And the net result then becomes, $5 of revenue for every $1 that you end up spending on people to do the live chat.
Wow. That was really interesting just to know that, how much that makes a difference. And you can tell when businesses are putting the question ahead of efficiency, I would say. So thank you for answering that. I'd love to hear, we've been talking about a lot of sort of what we're doing now in CX, but what do you actually think is the future of CX? What are businesses supposed to be doing to really stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah, I'll jump. Sure. Yeah.
You want to go first? I don't know.
Yeah, either way. That's fine.
Take it turns.
Yeah, I think, so I've been traveling a lot recently and talking to so many customers, so many prospective customers, so many interesting folks covering, the different industries and markets. And one of the things that's so top of mind for everybody I talk to, I'm sure everyone on the phone, is, what is going to happen with like the macroeconomic headwinds? I don't think any of us know exactly, but we just know there are headwinds and a tremendous amount of uncertainty for we just don't know how long and exactly what. And so I think it's wise. I think the general kind of consensus across the whole industry or economy is, how do we focus on our customers, right? We see, there's a lot of talk about new customer acquisition being more challenging, top of funnel being more challenging, and lower search volumes kind of across the board, right? So I think a lot of like traditional demand gen or like sales programs are feeling stress. So how do we really focus on our customers, and within that, how do we really focus on customer retention, customer expansion, customer just general, building a general base of customers that are super passionate about your brand? And in a way, it's like unfortunate that it's taken macroeconomic headwinds to come to this conclusion that we should focus on our customers. But if that's what it takes, then that's kind of what it takes. And so where the future of CX is going, I think is we're at a really kind of interesting time and frankly exciting time to deal with that question now, because all across the economy, companies have to turn to to our customers now more than ever. And so I think that CX is really poised for like building world class and really interesting new fresh takes on CX is I think is really poised for maybe a breakout moment now, because unlike the past where maybe CX was a bit siloed or maybe there was kind of one person looking across the whole journey, now we're seeing operations and product and sales and customer success and marketing, even in finance, come together and look at the whole thing and start to get really creative about the whole process. So I can't project exactly where it's going to go, but what I can say is we're at a really kind of awesome moment in time right now where we're all being forced to really look at this area very critically and more holistically than ever before. And I think that's only really positive for the other side of wherever we get to here.
Yeah, that's great, Steve. I mean, you had mentioned about the competitive moat too at the beginning, and I a few things that I think happen, going forward. Certainly looking out, 3 to 5 years, I think there's going to be a lot more chief customer officers at organizations.
Mhm.
I hope that there's a handful of metrics, right? And we go into depth about metrics in the book. But I do hope that there is a more singular rallying cry by that chief customer officer or the CEO around customer effort score. What are we doing to reduce the friction? And then, as much as we talked about at the beginning, wanting to separate these two ideas of customer support and service that we're doing from CX, if you go talk to any CFO at an organization, they're just looking at budgeted line items. And there's oftentimes this very large budgeted line item that is the customer service organization. And the customer service organization is primarily people expense. And I think the massive shift that we're going to actually see in that over the next several years is that it's currently like 80% people and 20% technology. And I actually think that is going to flip. It's going to be 80% technology. Instead of having to have an army of people to interact with your customers, you're going to have just a SWAT team or a specialized kind of Navy SEALs team that's just interacting with either your highest value customers and or the people that are having the stickiest situations that you want to make sure they're getting a high level of attention internally. Mm-hmm. And everything else is going to be utilized by technology. That doesn't mean that the people aren't attached to that technology, but it is, instead of this large organization of people, it's a plug that you have in the wall of a technology solution. It's going to completely change the way that organizations budget for and plan and think about customer service. It will make it cheaper, which will be part of the reason that going into a potentially challenging headwind economically, it will accelerate that trend, because people will say, cut costs. As much as we talk about how this is going to help generate revenue and how this is going to create a great customer experience and how it's a competitive moat, I want to be very honest that every organization we talk to, there's also a cost component, and that is going to persist, right? And being able to say we can solve for multiple customer pains and be disruptively less expensive wins the day.
Yeah. I love your point about the chief customer officer and just kind of the rise of that role. And we're seeing more and more of it. I've been to 2 conferences in the past 2 months or so where it was all about the chief customer officer. And I think it's amazing because in the new, the economy we're in now, so much of our customer relationships are about those long-term relationships, right? The retention and the growth of customers as opposed to the one-time transactional sale of a widget, which is really, really paving the way for this new executive role. And it's amazing to see what type of technology stack, kind of to your point about the inversion of of budget, it's amazing to see the breadth of technology that's becoming available to this chief customer officer, and is really, really exciting, I think, for the future of CX.
Yeah. All right. Well, I just want to say thank you, Steve and Daniel, for your incredible insights today. It was far exceeded any expectations I had of what I was coming here to learn today. And so I really appreciate it. I'm sure everybody on the line appreciates it. So thank you. We do have a couple of questions in the Q&A, so I'd love to get to them before we run out of time. So the first one we have is from Shelley, and it's, where is a good place to start with how to use AI in the customer experience?
Oh my goodness, this is such a loaded question. So when I think most people are thinking about AI in the customer experience, I actually think that most people mean chatbots. Now, I could be wrong in the way that it's perceived to you, Shelley, but I do think that utilizing technology, and the benefit of AI and machine learning, right, is that you are able to basically improve upon an existing data set and say, this response got better, and showing that you can then automate and effectively increase your automation take rate over time can be really powerful, because you won't damage customer relationships, right? Because that's the fear. You over automate and then you damage, and you show increased amount of savings. If you're a scaling company, it is a great thing to be able to go to your boss and say, I think I have a way for us to stop growing our costs at the same rate that the customer count is growing, because every investor wants to see margin improve as the company is scaling. So I do think that finding the leverage points with AI to be able to say, we are keeping costs flat or decreasing costs as the company is going like this, I think is really powerful.
Yeah, thank you. So we have just one other question, and then I think this question is for Steve, and it's from Dina, of how effective is building an online academy for B2B? As I think that's right for you to answer.
Near and dear to my heart, Dina. So we've seen tremendous results. I spoke at a conference 2 weeks ago alongside one of our customers. That's a B2B company. They're a software company, and so they shared some of their insights and their learnings and some of their ROI. But some of the areas that we see like most impacted in B2B with an online academy for customers are in the area of building brand awareness. And so we like to say that the education leader is the thought leader in this space. And so depending on what your goals are, you can use the education in so many different ways, but just kind of rip around some of the ways we see most often used. I mean, first would be in the way of building brand awareness. How do you provide an academy to really position as the thought leader within the space and have really premium educational content out there to become the go-to source for education, which drives brand awareness? When you think about in B2B, I don't know what your product is exactly, but oftentimes there's some level of implementation, some level of onboarding. So how do you educate? How do you train during that? When you think about like product releases, new product releases, how do you educate and train on those products and provide that continuing education? And then kind of coming full circle, when in B2B, you oftentimes have power users or admins or primary points of contact that are really important to developing those relations with and really elevating to that power user status. So how do you use certification programs to really elevate those users, those people in their careers with their skills around whatever domain it is you're serving? How do you really elevate them in their careers through certification, which, when someone can be elevated in their career, they really kind of come full circle and becoming a passionate fan for your business, which just leads to more and more awareness through referrals. So there's so many ways you can use an academy in the B2B side, and kind of depending on what your product is and what you're looking to impact in your customer journey, your customer experience, you can really pinpoint some great places to get started.
Great. And just the last question we'll answer here today, Forrest popped into the chat that they have a lot of automations for their drivers. He's in the on-demand industry. And he wanted to know what your thoughts are with automated responses for customers. So I'm assuming there's the driver and the person delivering the service and the end user who's actually receiving the service.
Yeah, I think that there are, we've seen several different types of use cases, again, on this value-based routing issue that can become automated. So for instance, where's my order is a frequently asked question in a customer interaction that needs to be attended to quickly. And you should be able to automate that. I mean, we help companies automate that. I think that is available to you. If there is a complaint that is happening, we work with a large burger chain and do all of their support on their app. And one of the things that happens all the time is that people are responding that something wasn't right in the order. The ability to be responsive quickly to somebody and make that right via a refund. We've been able to automate some of those interactions, and actually through automation have been able to reduce incidents of kind of fraudulent, sometimes people will come back and try to hit it multiple times. And by utilizing technology, we've been able to satisfy the needs that customers have to do that, while also reducing the amount of total, what we'd consider to be kind of fraud expense that can occur there. So it becomes this win-win. It's fast for people, they're getting responses that they need, and it's also saving the company money, which is great. So more than happy again for us to chat much more about this. We can go deep.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Daniel, so much for joining us. Thank you, everybody who attended, who's watching on demand. We really are so happy to be able to share all of this with you, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much.